Welcome back. Now that I've talked about the visual potential that I exploited in different displays on my infographic, I'm going to talk a little bit about the models that I used to put it all together and some of the design principles that I followed in creating my infographic. I chose a color model that I thought was professional but still vibrant because I've noticed that many organizations that serve refugees embrace color choices that are friendly but not too loud. I decided to use a complementary color scheme of orange and turquoise with white and light gray background colors to create a display that could present serious information without being overly dramatic. To emulate my model, I used white as the base background and light gray as a contrasting background for smaller sections. My location data is very similar to the model in that it uses turquoise semi-transparent bubbles over a light gray map, as you can see here. That's really similar to my location display. And I decided to repeat this use of blue bubbles in my timeline in order to stay consistent. In this color model, orange was used for icons and number displays. I tried to emulate this by making my bar graph and the icons in my process diagram orange. In my process diagram and timeline, I also used the colors to encode the data. Turquoise denotes people or their movements, while orange denotes processes, laws, and organizations. This was a departure from my model because the model, as you can see, had no need for that kind of encoding, but I felt it was true to the way that the model used colors consistently for different purposes. As you can see, sort of blue is up here and the orange is down here, and they're very distinct. To return to my infographic, you can see that I did deviate from the model in a couple of respects. I didn't care for the text color that was used in the color model, which you can see here. There's sort of this weird clashy blue that was used for the text headers. That felt out of place for me, so I decided not to adopt those aspects of the model, and instead I adopted a uniform dark gray text color and used orange and blue for text highlights, as you can see here, where it felt appropriate. It was kind of difficult to say where my color model ended and where the text and layout models began, so where one model failed me, I would pull inspiration from another model in order to create a stronger display. My text model uses 3 different fonts for a dramatic but still professional effect. It uses a slab serif font, as you can see here, for the title, a condensed Gothic font for headers, and a humanist sans serif font for the body text. I ended up choosing Arvo, League, Gothic, and Arial as very close approximations of these fonts to serve those 3 purposes. Since, as you can see, this model doesn't actually have graphical data, I did have to get a little creative about how fonts would be used in my display. I decided that since Arial would be used for body copy, like these paragraph texts, it could also be used for annotations and small labels. I used League Gothic to display titles and to highlight particularly important numbers. So if you see these numbers here, I tried to do the same thing with the numbers here. And again, I used the slab serif font only for the title, just like the model. But since I had a lot of different types of data, I had to use text for a lot of different purposes. I used text for annotation, like in this introductory paragraph, labels, for example, on this bar chart, and precision, for example, the years on the timeline say exactly at what points these different waves of immigration start, instead of just sort of leaving it general. The labels are mainly associated with what they label via proximity, but in some cases, such as the timeline here, pointers are used for greater specificity. Moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about the visual hierarchy of this infographic. It's created here by a repeated pattern of a large display on a white background, followed by 3 smaller, more simple displays in a 3-column format on a gray background. Since the larger displays are more eye-catching, their vertical arrangement helps to sort of draw the eye down the page through a clear narrative, while the gray backgrounds help to break up these large displays so that they can sort of convey 3 distinct thoughts and be viewed really separately. This vertical arrangement follows my layout model, which you can see here, which alternates large displays with 3-column smaller displays in order to create a sense of story. I also followed this model by moving from larger and somewhat less detailed displays to smaller and more detailed displays, which sort of creates the sense that you're wading in and then learning more as you travel down the page. And I know this process diagram is not really simple by any means, but it uses white space and has fewer text annotations than, for example, this timeline down here. So I would argue that it is simpler. Obviously, I did have to add another 3-column section and a large section below that isn't present on this infographic, in large part because I just had more data than this infographic was displaying. But I feel that the change I made, which was just to repeat this sort of 3-column bar and make another section below, is still true to the spirit of the infographic, even if it isn't exactly the same. Another place where I deviated somewhat from my layout model was in alignment. The model uses a number of different alignment methods, such as center alignment of the information on these gray backgrounds, top edge alignment of the text in the bottom section, and what looks like an attempt at edge alignment on some of the elements on the left side. But when I looked closely, I realized that there were a lot of places where alignment could be achieved by more careful positioning. So in my final layout, I tried to keep edge alignment consistent within sections, such as down this side, and also across them where possible, so this is all kind of aligned here. I stuck to the model by center aligning the text and image elements inside these 3-column sections, but decided to modify some things. For example, I removed the left margin here on the box containing this paragraph text because I felt that having it flush with the edge actually looked a lot better than the original layout model. As much as possible, I did try to stick to the model, but occasionally I felt I should change things when it really did improve the overall appearance of the display. Moving on, I'll talk about unity and variety. I created unity and variety in my display through a number of strategies. I'll just talk about a couple of them. First of all, I used a limited color palette and just a handful of shapes in consistent ways to use unity. So I repeated the use of circles a lot, and I also used sort of text in consistent ways. But I created variety by combining color, size, and shape in different ways as appropriate. So you can see I have these arrows up here and this arrow down here, but they're different colors. So that gives a sense of variation, even if they're actually still very similar, or the same shape. Also, I used 3 fonts and a number of different font sizes to create variety, but I created unity by using these fonts and font sizes in a really consistent manner. So, for example, the headers and body font are different, but they're used in the same way across the 3 large displays. So, in conclusion, one of the most important things I learned in the course of creating this infographic, in addition to how to use Illustrator, because I didn't really know that before, was the fact that the different elements of design can't be fully separated. Not all fonts are going to look right with certain color schemes, for example, and alignment choices can affect the visual hierarchy in important ways, and so on and so forth. I discovered this when I tried to blend together 3 very different models. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't tried to do that, because it sometimes forced me to make different choices than I anticipated. At the same time, it was really rewarding to pull apart all of those pieces. Before this class, I might have started over when running into these kinds of design frustrations that I had in the process of creating this infographic, and now I feel like I have the tools to closely examine parts of a display that seem wrong, or displays that are difficult to read, and diagnose more precisely what needs to be fixed, because it isn't always that you need to throw it out and start over. Sometimes it's just like a really simple issue of alignment or sizing or what have you. Although I still have a lot to learn, I now feel a lot more confident in my ability to make basic design choices and display information effectively. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening, and if you want more information about this project, please feel free to explore the site. Thanks again.